just use the chat box on there. Feel free to share your thoughts as we go along the webinar on the chat section. For questions, we'll ask that you please use the Q&A section of Zoom. It would also be great for you to kind of tell us who you want to answer your question. We have two speakers here, so if you put the questions, if you tell us which of them you prefer to take the questions, that would be helpful. We also have a few guests, or some guests joining across our social media platform. Please feel free to drop your comments and your thoughts in the comment section. We have a team that's monitoring those platforms throughout the webinar, and we'll be happy to address as many questions as possible, time permitting, during the Q&A session. And also just to mention that so that we're seamless in the execution, we'll keep our question and answer for after the two panelists have finished. So we have a dedicated section or time for Q&A section for the question and answer. Also, we will ask that you please keep your microphone muted through the webinar. This will help us minimize background noise. It's raining very heavily here on my side, so I can imagine there will be some background noise. So we'll just keep our mics muted as much as possible to ensure that it's seamless and noise-free for participants. While the webinar is going on, we'll also be sharing slides and other visual content. Please feel free to maximize your screen or adjust the window size of your device so that you see as clearly as possible. And before I hand over to Lois, I think the last thing I want to say here is we really encourage active participation. Let's make this as conversational as possible. Let's ask questions, let's drop our thoughts, because it will help to give us a richer experience for the webinar. And very last thing from me, if you have any tech, drop a comment and one of us will pick it up and resolve any issues. So I'll hand over to Lois. She'll introduce our first speaker and then we'll take it from there. Lois, over to you.
Thank you, Sori, and thank you everyone for being patient with us as we've gone through a lot of the housekeeping and background information. Now to the meat of the day, the real reason why we're here. I'm going to introduce our first speaker today. He's going to be speaking to us on how health insurance works in Nigeria. His name is Mr. Kola Oni, and he is no stranger to us at Pistis Foundation. He's one of our advisory board members here on health, and he's a very committed partner and supporter of all of what we do here at Pistis Foundation. Kola is a strategist and a business leader with experience and focus on healthcare and consumer markets. He has 2 decades experience advising and supporting companies to achieve strategic growth. He's a principal at Altway, a platform that helps entrepreneurs bring their ideas to reality. He was a 2022 40 under 40 Young Executive Leader of the International Hospital Federation, and he's also an alumnus of KPMG, PwC, Lagos Business School, and is also a chartered accountant. So please join me as we give a virtual applause and as we welcome Mr. Kola Oni. Take us through the first session.
Good afternoon, and many thanks, Lois, for that introduction. And many thanks to you and the organizing team as well for putting this webinar together, and to Pistis Foundation for providing the platform for these quarterly webinars, which have consistently supported the education of the public on important issues. I am delighted to speak at today's webinar on the topic of health insurance. And our expectation between me and Dr. Titoju is that we would have been able to drop 1 or 2 key insights that will help all of our listeners make more informed decisions on their health. So on that note, I would also like to welcome all of the listeners who have joined us on this Zoom call, as well as across all of the social media platforms where this webinar is being live streamed. I'm sure we all agree with the common saying that health is wealth, but how much of wealth is our health? It's important for us to always guard and protect our health. Unfortunately, one of the challenges we have in a society like ours that probably we have not yet mastered how to achieve collective efforts. The challenge for us is that healthcare is one of those societal challenges that has been proven to be better solved through collective rather than individual efforts. There was a very funny story during the COVID pandemic of a certain wealthy individual who actually made attempts to build a hospital for himself inside his mansion. Of course, the idea failed because Nigeria was struggling to get anesthetists. And of course, he couldn't corner one for himself. He couldn't even get across the entire world. So this just goes to show how important it is for us to take healthcare solutions as collective efforts. And health insurance is one of those amazing, powerful means that we can actually use to make this happen. And that's why I believe that the topic that we're discussing today is extremely important. And it's going to be a very, very important one across the journey as we all try to make informed choices about our health. So I'm going to talk through health insurance and how it works in Nigeria, while Dr. Otitoju, I believe, will talk about, give us how we can actually apply it in our day-to-day life. I'll talk about health insurance. I'll talk about what is called out-of-pocket payments and what it actually means. The structure of the markets. I'll talk about some of the key players without marketing any one of them. Then we'll come down to our listeners and share with them certain things about how premium pricing is determined, as well as about how claims are processed and how this would affect you. As then, of course, we'll take your questions. We'll be delighted to take your questions. Please put them in the chat box, and when the time comes for that, I'll be delighted to take them. So I'd like to start by talking about what health insurance is. We'll cut out a lot of the jargons as much as possible so that the audience can understand us. But essentially, health insurance is a way of pooling risk together. And just to do a bit of a check, I'd like to know if we can all see my screen clearly. It's working well for us, okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Health insurance is a risk pooling system. And the way it works is that small contributions from different people is put together into a pot. It's called a pool. And from that pool, we can then take care of the health of different people who may fall sick. The image you're looking at on the screen is just a very simplistic way of trying to explain to us how health insurance works. So you can look at about 100 people, typically called lives in health insurance. And these 100 people have enrolled for a health insurance scheme. Maybe they've paid about 50,000 naira each. All that money is taken into a pool, given to health insurance companies. And those health insurance companies would now be the ones to pay for everybody when they need to go to the hospital. The number one thing I'd like to say about this is that it is not everybody who has paid for health insurance that must use it. Because you have paid for health insurance, what you have simply done is that you have contributed to a pool. What health insurance is meant to give you is peace of mind. That's one. The second thing health insurance is going to give you is that it should help you take preventive and early actions when you are sick. I used to work to be one of the leaders in a hospital in Lagos. And we noticed by looking at the data that those who have health insurance typically come to the hospital before their sickness becomes bad. So on the average, for those who have health insurance, maybe only 2% of them actually get admitted when they come to the hospital. When we contrast that with those who don't have health insurance, close to 10% of those who don't have health insurance get admitted when they come to the hospital, simply because before they come to the hospital, their condition would have worsened and their conditions would have become more expensive to treat. So in a typical case where you have 100 people who have paid for the insurance premium, just as we're seeing on the screen, you could then see these smaller circles to the other side of the screen. Those smaller circles represent the claims, the encounters when these people go to the hospital. So out of 100 people who have paid, you may see that only 75 of them will go to the hospital. But those 75 people may go to the hospital an average of 2 times. Some of them may go 3 times, some may go once. And the cost that they will pay can vary. So this is 50,000 premium, but you can see maybe 100 of them would end up incurring cost of about 10,000 in the hospital that the health insurance company will pay for. One of them, maybe that very big circle, maybe somebody who had to pay 1 million or 500,000 at the hospital. The insurance company would also pay for that. Then the insurance company will make sure that if they've collected, let's say, 1 million, the total cost that they have incurred will not be more than, let's say, 90,000 or 85, or 8.5 million or 9 million out of the 10 million they collected, so that they can also have a little bit of money for their administration and to pay the salaries of their staff and things like that. So very important for us to know that just because you have paid for health insurance doesn't mean that you must go to the hospital, but you would have peace of mind that if anything major happens, you will be able to go to the hospital. Secondly, you have peace of mind that you don't need to delay the preventive steps that you need to take about your health. Then finally, in the spirit of the collective, is that you need to realize that your health insurance payment a lot of times is your own way of contributing to the collective. You might not benefit from it, but your mom in the village, your sister, your brother in another city may be the ones who would end up falling sick and who would need to use the hospital. Now, after this overarching view, the question then is that what is health insurance like in Nigeria? At the moment, the health insurance coverage in the country is actually quite poor. When we compare Nigeria to a lot of other African countries, not even to the Western world, we will see that our health insurance coverage is really abysmal and is quite low. The adoption is low. We have something called out-of-pocket payments. Out-of-pocket payment means when you get to the hospital and you want to access care, you will bring money out of your pocket. And that out-of-pocket payment is about 80% of all of our healthcare costs in Nigeria. Our insurance coverage is about 5%, and the remaining 15% or so is covered by people like DFIs and things like that. Even countries like Rwanda have as much as 90% coverage, which means almost everybody in the country is on some sort of health insurance. And this is where we need to strive to get to as a country. Luckily, we're already moving towards that by every standard, and the new administration is probably even pushing a bit more of an agenda towards health insurance in the country. So this out-of-pocket payment I spoke about, how exactly does it work in real life? What you're seeing on the screen is like a schematic description of what the average family will do when they fall sick. You can start from anywhere. You can start with a poor household with catastrophic health needs. Somebody falls sick today and they suddenly realize that they need to do a surgery. It could be a very small surgery like appendicitis or something. And they go to the hospital to seek healthcare. When they get to the hospital, they need to pay out of pocket 600,000 naira. They don't know where to get it. And eventually they are forced to pay. They tax everybody in their family. They tax the next generation. They sell their land, they sell their houses at times just for them to be able to access care. What that means is that they would have less income for other things in their lives. They have less income to buy food. They have less money to provide a proper shelter. They have less money for the proper sanitation that they need. And what this then means is that they have an increased risk of even falling sick. When you have an increased risk of falling sick, it means that you're going to have an increased risk of poverty. Because there's something about the quality of living that eventually impacts your ability to make money to sustain yourself. So this sort of household would have a bigger problem about healthcare, and they become poorer again because of the fact that they are paid out of pocket. What health insurance does is on this screen, where we can see the red line of the care and we can see the point where we can break that cycle. We break that cycle, and instead of this poor hygiene and nutrition, this person actually purchases insurance. And because they purchase insurance, they have a healthcare need. When they go to seek healthcare this time around, they've broken this cycle. They are going to this cycle, the insurer pays. When the insurer pays, they have more money for other things. They can do better nutrition and education. And of course, they keep purchasing insurance. What we like doing in Nigeria a lot of times is that when somebody is sick, we can all contribute 10 million naira for them to go and do a kidney transplant in India. But that 10 million naira should have been better used if we can all as a society just decide to contribute 50,000 naira at the beginning of the year. But we always need a law to make some of these things work. And that is why the steps being taken by the government in this regard, which we're going to talk about later, is going to work. So, talking about the health insurance market, there are 4 major categories of people. First is that there must be people who provide money. Then the people who will collect the money and hold it in the pool of funds. Then you have the providers. The providers are those who will actually serve people who need care. Then, of course, is the users. Sometimes there's an overlap between the users and the people who are providing the funding, but it's not every time that they are the same. For instance, some individuals will buy health insurance directly. They would also be the ones to use it. In some other instances, a DFI, like the World Bank or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, may actually purchase health insurance for some communities or for some groups of people so that those people can become the users. But this is the basic framework. The funding sources in Nigeria are the government, federal and state, development finance institutions who are operating in the country, corporates like banks, telcos, power companies, then of course individuals. And the aggregators, the people who put funds together, include the preeminent and leading one is the Nigerian National Health Insurance Scheme, which is NHIS for short. The NHIS was set up to be like the regulator as well as a player in the Nigerian health insurance market. Currently, almost all federal government workers are on an NHIS insurance scheme. that is funded directly by the federal government, as well as some DFIs. Then we have private insurers that we typically call HMOs. Some of them are called TPAs. They are a little bit different from HMOs because they allow you to go to the hospital and then you just deposit money with them and you enjoy the rates that they've been able to negotiate with hospitals, but they don't operate exactly like insurers. Then we have recently created state health insurance schemes. So every state has the state health insurance schemes. For instance, Lagos State has what is called LASHMA. Going forward, a lot of our interactions in the health insurance space is actually meant to be through our state health insurance schemes, with the private players providing support, but the market is waiting for the operational guidelines from the NHIS before some of these things will kick off. Then, of course, you have the users, then you have the providers. The providers are the hospitals, both government and private, the pharmacies, where you can pick up drugs, and of course, the diagnostic centers where you can do your tests and where you can do your X-ray, your CT, MRI, and some of those sort of things. The users are the individuals like us on the platform, employees of organizations that have bought health insurance, government workers that insurance have been bought for, and we have some communities like when health insurance was first pioneered in Nigeria, there was actually an entire community in Kwara State that was used for a pilot scheme, and they all bought health insurance for them, DFI and the government, and then they can go to the hospital. Then, of course, the interaction between these different people, speaking about between the funding sources and the aggregators, the first thing is that there's always something called an actuarial pricing, which means how do you know the amount of money to pay for your health insurance? Because how do you know the frequency of people falling sick? How do you know what is going to be the biggest cost that one person would incur? Because as an insurance company or an aggregator, you need to do very complex calculations that will help you know this pricing. It's a very complex topic. It's one of the most important things you need to do in a health insurance company. Then, of course, the insurance companies have distribution channels all over the country. They're expected to be able to reach out to people. They're expected to have agents who can guide you if you want to buy a policy from them. Then, of course, after you've bought, they would enroll you and onboard you and all of that. Then between the aggregators and the providers is payments. You will see that the providers, after they've seen patients and all of that, they will submit monthly bills to the insurance companies who will pay. Sometimes the insurance companies will pay ahead through something called capitation. We'll talk about that. Then, of course, the NHIS, apart from being an insurer, is also like the regulator. So they are the ones who license health insurance companies in the country. Between the providers and the users, there's care delivery, there's purchases of drugs, medicaments, and other healthcare needs. Then, of course, there's payments and reconciliation that happens between them. So this is an overarching structure of how the different parties relate together. One other quick point is like you have other inputs like manufacturers who provide drugs. They're more like providers themselves, and occasionally you will see some state health insurance scheme or NHIS engaging directly with some of these manufacturers on behalf of everybody, so that maybe they can get better pricing for everyone and things like that. Okay. All right. Now, who are the players? The National Health Insurance Scheme is like the dominant, preeminent player in the health insurance space in Nigeria. Private players, popularly called HMOs, they are also regulated by the NHIS, but they operate on their own. We have one NHIS, we have about 20 state health insurance schemes that have become active now, but they have not yet become operational. But they have the law. Some of them have set up agencies and things like that. LASHMA, which is a Lagos State scheme, is actually one of the leading ones. They are active. a lot of Lagos State government workers are on it. They are selling product to the private sector as well. The overall size of the market is about 300 billion. Very poor because that is barely $500 million. It's just roughly about $400 million. Meanwhile, healthcare spending in Nigeria as a whole is roughly over between $13 to $15 billion over the past decade annually. So you can see that a lot of our healthcare spending of about $14 billion, $15 billion, only $400 million out of it is through insurance. More importantly is that even that insurance, maybe only a third of it is from the private players. It's still a lot of payments through the NHIS. So the key players like THC, AXA, Leadway Health, IGEA, and co, they make up that very small portion, and they are all spread so thin because they don't have a lot of markets to play with. So how does this affect all of us in terms of pricing? National Health Insurance Scheme as a product in the market was initially sold only to federal government workers, but they are rolling out more to allow the general public actually purchase it. There are people who actually buy NHIS. I have NHIS for my parents back in Osun State, bought directly, and at the same time they can access private healthcare in Lagos. So at times you want to buy both so that they can still get, because health insurance actually allows you to get better care even in the public hospitals. Then you have the Lagos State scheme. They also have their products. A lot of these products are capitation type products. What a capitation type product does for you is that the insurance company will pay a fixed amount of money to the hospital every month at the beginning of the month. And they expect that for certain types of benefits or certain types of ailments, the hospital will just take care of it without getting back to them. It's only when the condition is going beyond certain limits that the hospital will then charge them a separate fee. So that's also the model that the Lagos State products are using. For the private health insurance guys, they are using something different. For a lot of them, they do what is called like fee for service, where you go to the hospital to get care, and after you have received care, they will send a bill to the insurance provider, and the insurance provider will pay them roughly about 45 days after care has been received. But all of their products are typically built around maybe 4 or 5 categories. They can give them different names, but some will say bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and then there's an international plan. Some will say ruby, sapphire, amethyst, topaz. They can give it whatever name that they like. But what they're trying to say is that just like in healthcare, it's just about the same, your socioeconomic status. If you are earning 100 million naira in a year, of course, you probably have access to better healthcare than someone who's earning 2 million naira in a year. So even though health insurance is applicable at every socioeconomic level, it doesn't mean that we would all have exactly the same level of care. You may want to be in a private room in the hospital. You may even want to be in a suite where your family members can stay with you, but not everybody can afford that. Some can afford where you are 8 people in a room, but you are properly demarcated and you have your privacy in a way. So you buy what your pocket can afford, but the important thing is that you are allowed to at least get care. So you can see a bronze plan where you actually share a room with 7 other people, and you can be on an international plan where you can actually take a suite, or where you can ask to be flown abroad if you like. So there are different categories of products in health insurance space. But what are the factors that are used in pricing this health insurance? In Nigeria at the moment, for a lot of our private schemes, for the NHIS and LASHMA scheme, they just give a flat price for everybody because it's a population health challenge. So you just want to, the risk pool is big. So they can just do that. For the corporate guys, they look at the size of the company that is about to buy, and they may look at the type of plans that the company wants to buy. But as we mature in our insurance journey, we are going to see a lot more instances where other things are being used. The laws of the state where you are will be taken into consideration. Your income level, of course, that's also taken into consideration at the moment. If you have pre-existing conditions, maybe hypertension or things like that, if you are using tobacco or other addictive substances, all of these things will start going into your pricing. So it's good for you to maintain your health, do your exercises and things like that as much as possible, because ultimately those are the things that will aid you even in your drive to still use health insurance. You cannot say, "Oh, I have health insurance, so let me misbehave. Let me continue to do things that are not helpful, to my health." Then the way claims are processed. So after you've bought the pricing, you've gone to your provider and all of that. Depending on the type of product you buy, your insurer may decide that they want to treat your policy in different ways. One of the ways they treat policies is they call it capitation. Under a capitation model, you will get to the hospital, the insurers would have sent your name to the hospital, and they will tell the hospital certain things that you can do. You can do malaria testing, you can see a doctor, you can do lab tests for certain things, but maybe you cannot do lab tests for complex things. Then when you get to the hospital will check you. If you like, go to the hospital 4 times, the hospital will treat you. And what they've done is that they've passed some of the risk to the hospitals. So the hospital will be very careful. They will want to make sure you don't need to come again, because if you need to come again or they don't treat you very well for that same thing, is a loss to them. A second model is called fee for service. Fee for service is like the HMO will just tell the hospital, just go ahead and treat anybody that comes, as long as they have this particular benefit. Then at the end of the month, send us the bill and we'll pay you. Typically, this fee for service has its own advantages and disadvantages as well. Then there's a reimbursable model where the insurance company will tell you to go to the hospital and whatever you pay, just spend your own money. Then you will send the insurance company a bill. The hospital will give you a receipt. You give it to the insurance company, and within 2 weeks, they will reimburse you. Then, of course, there's co-payments. A co-payment is a scheme where, whether it's capitation, whether it's fee for service, whether it's reimbursable, the insurance company will tell you to bear maybe 10% of the cost of the care. This co-payment is probably going to be the model of choice in the country going forward, because it puts some bit of responsibility on everybody, and it makes people to start challenging unnecessary care that the hospital might want to give them at times. So none of this is better than the other, but they mean different things at different stages. So for instance, for the capitation, you will see that there's a reduced, hospital will be very careful when they'll be managing things, because they know that they've collected the money, they now need to manage it very well so that they can keep a profit. But you would also have faster access for the services that you have been given. Ultimately, capitation can reduce insurance premium for everybody overall. On the other model, which is the other model, fee for service, there's a lot of delays at the point of authorization. There are better service and options from the hospital because they don't care. They just want to use care so that they can. And eventually it makes insurance more expensive for everybody. It can also increase the propensity for fraud on the side of the hospital. For reimbursables, you can get faster service because you are paying your money. Nobody is holding you back. The insurance company will deal with you later. The insurance company also likes you because they don't need to pay money. You are using your own money and giving them a loan upfront. But it can also engender a lot of fraud because people can just abuse it. So a lot of times it's currently limited to people that are on the higher end, especially the international plans. Under the co-payment option, you will take a lot more interest in the care that you are being given because you know that eventually you will bear part of the charges. Between capitation well managed and co-payment, definitely we believe that co-payment needs to take more root in the Nigerian system. And then we can have a mix of capitation and fee for service as well in the market. So what does the future hold for us? Before I quickly wrap up, there's a new insurance law that was passed by President Buhari. And President Tinubu, as part of his 100 days plan, actually wants to operationalize that plan so that we all know. So what are we to expect? Going forward, we will all have to buy health insurance from Lashma if you're in Lagos. If you're in another part of the country, you need to buy health insurance from your state health insurance scheme. So everybody will buy that basic health insurance that the government is providing. Someone will pay for you. You will buy if you're an individual. If you're a company, your company will buy for you. But everybody is expected to have health insurance. It's compulsory. What that means is that even when you are totally broke, you will be able to walk into a government hospital and you will receive care to a certain level. However, there would always be certain things that will not be covered by this general and basic insurance, and people will then be allowed to buy top-up packages from private health insurance companies. So we expect that what they will need to cover for will then be those catastrophic things like cancer, or maybe you want to do dental cover, or you want a better limit on your glasses. Because they may say the limit for glasses is 10,000 naira, but you want a better limit. And we think that most likely the capitation model is what we use for all these public insurance customers. And we would all have to choose the hospitals that are giving us the better service. Another thing we should all expect is that there will be a lot of technology used, because if you want to bring everybody onto the government scheme, you will need to use identifiers like BVN and things like that. And of course, that would also mean that there will be a lot of common pricing. And with this common pricing means that there will be improved service delivery, because HMOs will now be competing based on service, not only on pricing, and it will be better for everyone. So thank you very much. I will now hand over to Suare to continue the conversation with Dr. Titoju. And I look forward to taking your questions at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kola. Although I'm a co-moderator here, I think this webinar is for me because there's so many things that I never knew has been happening within this industry. So thank you very much for a very insightful session. I think I would like to just kind of summarize my key takeouts from all of the things that you've said. The most important, I think one of the most important for me is just understanding how far the work that needs to be done within the industry. I hear you mention that less than 10% of the populace have access, and that's very surprising if, like you mentioned, countries like Rwanda have up to 90% of their population using health insurance. It's shocking, but it's a good thing to know about that. The other thing that I take out from here is just understanding government participation in healthcare. I didn't know that NHIS was functional. I've always heard about it, but I thought it's one of those other things that we have, but we don't have. And I'm also hearing for the first time that the states will now have their health insurance schemes. And for me, I think the objective of this webinar, if you ask me, we've already achieved it, because this information, it's not what everybody knows. So thank you very much for that. And finally, just so that we make up for our time, I think the overall highlight for me here is the increased need for health insurance penetration in Nigeria, right? It will also be helpful to have health insurance collaborate better and have some kind of market consolidation, so that there's better value across all of the players in the industry. Yeah, I think these things are key takeouts for me. Once again, thank you so much for this insightful session. I wanted to just remind everyone here, please don't wait till the end of the next session to drop your questions. Feel free, we're collecting questions now. Feel free to use the Q&A section and just drop your questions, and we'll take as much as we can, time permitting. Next on, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. He'll take us through another very compelling session, and our panelist is Dr. Olatokunbo Otitoju. He is a highly skilled healthcare financing specialist. He has a lot of expertise in clinical medicine, healthcare financing. He also has experience with occupational, preventive, and digital health solutions. These days, we know that for you to be effective, there needs to be a tech aspect to whatever you're doing. And he comes with a wealth of experience, just having that collaboration, if I may say, between tech and medicine. He's made significant contributions to the healthcare industry, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole. It's good to mention here that he's a founding member of AXA Mansard Health. And we all know that AXA Mansard is one of the most popular health insurances that we have in Nigeria. He played a very pivotal role to the success of AXA Mansard. He's also served as Executive Director for Operations at Bastion Health. And currently, he's founder and CEO of Kilon Health. I'd mentioned technology earlier. The Kilon Health is a technology-driven company specializing in health benefit management for employees. And through within his current capabilities, he provides innovative solutions to corporate entities using very efficient management of health, employee health benefits. His dedication to his craft has led him to drive the provision of affordable and accessible healthcare service, and he's made a substantial impact on the industry. So please join me as we welcome Dr. Tokunbo to take us through the next session. Dr. Tokunbo, welcome. Please, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me, please? Okay. Thank you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this highly informative webinar on this important topic of health insurance. And in this era where the importance of safeguarding our health and financial stability has become paramount, especially because of the economic condition of economic situation of the country. Understanding the intricacies of health insurance is more vital now than ever. We're gathered here to shed light on the complex landscape of health insurance, to demystify common misconceptions, and to empower you with the knowledge needed to make informed decisions regarding your healthcare coverage. So whether you are an individual or you are a business owner trying to navigate the realm of employee health benefits, this webinar will equip you with the tools you need to navigate the complexity of health insurance effectively. So thank you once again for having me. I'll just briefly take us through the outline to look at health financing under country and individual perspective, to understand health insurance, why we need health insurance, and to also understand the broader societal impact of health insurance, and to address the common concerns about health insurance. So I'll take us through this very important slide just to provide a perspective about healthcare financing in Nigeria and a brief overview. We have a population of about 200 million people with a GDP of 495 billion. And unfortunately for us, our healthcare spending is about 3.8% of our GDP, which is very, very low. And we have a government-funded healthcare per capita expenditure of $5 per head. According to the WHO, we need about $86 minimum to guarantee universal health coverage. So what this means is that we need to mobilize private sector funding. We need to mobilize contributions from Nigerians to fund healthcare. The NHS budget for 2023 is about 185 billion pounds, just for healthcare alone, of which the NHS, which is the social health insurance scheme in the UK, will provide over 80% of that funding. So if you look at 185 billion pounds and you try to convert it to the Naira equivalent today, it's a whole lot of money, probably bigger than what Nigeria and the entire 36 states, including the FCT, will spend on healthcare over the next 15 years or so. And this is what the UK spends in a year on 50 million people. So we have a wide deficit in healthcare funding in Nigeria. And aside that, we have a lot of out-of-pocket spending, which Kola has mentioned. And here on this slide, we try to look at Ghana, Thailand, and Nigeria. I will try to look at the percentage of government expenditure, percentage of out-of-pocket expenditure, and we then compare it with other health indicators. So you look at Ghana, we look at their life expectancy as 63 years after birth, compared with Nigeria at 53 years. You look at Thailand as well at 76 years life expectancy compared to Nigeria. And you look at the amount of out-of-pocket expenditure. Ghana is at 37%, while Nigeria is at 75 and 77%. In Thailand, 10% of their healthcare expenditure is out of pocket, compared to 77% in Nigeria. And then you try to tie this to infant mortality, you try to tie it to under 5 mortality as well. And you can see a link between government expenditure on healthcare versus out-of-pocket expenditure and how this affects our overall health indicators in Nigeria. So we have a problem at hand, which is to try as much as possible to mobilize funding for healthcare, which, of course, the safest and the most effective way is through health insurance. This is an overview of healthcare financing in Nigeria. Approximately 6% of the population is covered by health insurance. And one of the reasons for this is because prior to the new National Health Insurance Act, health insurance was not mandatory in Nigeria. So a lot of people pay out of pocket for healthcare. We have about 6%, which is very, very low, even by African standard. Hopefully this new law will push this number up to about 40% or 50% so that we can guarantee health insurance coverage for Nigerians. And we also look at expenditure on healthcare. On malaria alone, Nigerians spent 1.7 trillion on malaria out of pocket. 87.8% of this was from household contribution. And if you look at this amount of money that was spent on malaria alone, apart from other healthcare cases, this is very, very huge. This is a huge burden on households in Nigeria. And this is what contributes to poverty in Nigeria, because 1.7 trillion has wiped out a lot of income from Nigerian households because they do not have health insurance to cater to this type of expenditure. So we see what we call a cycle of out-of-pocket payments, where people try to make out-of-pocket payment for healthcare, reduces their income for other consumptions, especially education, rent, food, which leads to poorer nutrition, leads to out-of-school children, increased vulnerability to illnesses, leads to increased poverty, poor household with a sick member because they have to take care of that sick member from the household income. And at the end of the day, some of them don't seek healthcare and then they fall ill, which further leads to reduced productivity in Nigeria. So this cycle is very important to just buttress the points that out-of-pocket payments without health insurance leads to this very, very sad cycle of poorer nutrition, less income for other consumptions, increased vulnerability to illness, increased level of poverty in Nigeria, people not seeking healthcare, reduced productivity as well. So we need to understand health insurance as a whole. It's a type of health insurance coverage that provides first financial protection to individuals or groups against the cost of medical expense. So when you take up any health insurance policy, you are indirectly or directly saying that whatever the cost of healthcare is for this year that I'm going to incur, I am safeguarding my risk. I am paying ahead for it. So if I pay 50,000 naira for health insurance in a year, whatever I face, whether it's outpatient care because of malaria, upper respiratory tract infections, or even surgery, I know that any amount of money that I earn from January to December, I am protected. I won't have to dip my money in my pocket because of all these other illnesses. So your income is stable. You can predict your spending pattern on healthcare because you're paying your regular premiums for health insurance. There are some key terms that we need to also understand, which are the premiums. Your premiums are the amount of money that the health insurance companies charge you to cover the risk of you falling ill and going to the hospital to pay out of pocket. Ranges in Nigeria from 15,000 naira, probably up to 100, 200,000 naira, depending on the benefits. And the benefits are the coverage agreed between you and the insurance company. So you can have a list of benefits from outpatient care that covers you for basic outpatient illnesses like malaria, upper respiratory tract infections, accidents and emergencies on an outpatient basis, or inpatient care such as surgery, maternity care, and so on and so forth. And then you have a network. The network is the list of hospitals that you can visit to access healthcare. And this is usually determined by the amount of premium that you have paid to the insurer and the list of hospitals that you have selected. So the insurance company will present to you a list of hospitals that you can visit based on your premiums, because cost of healthcare varies from one hospital to the other. And you also have your claims. So each time you visit the hospital bills your health insurance company instead of asking you to pay out of pocket for healthcare. And then you have your exclusions. These are the illnesses excluded from your health insurance policy. So whenever you try to take up a health insurance policy, you have to take note of your premiums, you have to take note of your benefits, you have to take note of your health hospital networks, you have to take note of your exclusions as well and how your claims will be paid. Caller mentioned that the various types of claims payment mechanisms, capitation method, fee-for-service method, also the TPA agreement. So what are the types of health insurance that we have currently in Nigeria? The most common ones are the government programs, which is the NHIS plans and the employee-sponsored health insurance scheme. Individuals and families usually don't take up health insurance in Nigeria, especially those in the informal sector that are not under the structured employee healthcare programs. So we have these three: government, individual and families, and employee-sponsored programs. So why do we need health insurance? First, financial protection. Health insurance costs goes up year on year. There's something called medical inflation. So if you buy a medication today, let's assume you buy Augmentin today at 5,000 naira. After 6 months, probably it will sell at 5,500 or 6,000 naira. And by next year, 7,000 naira. So it's called medical inflation and it's applicable worldwide. So you have to protect yourself through health insurance so that you don't have to spend, you are not exposed to medical inflation. Another one is the financial protection against catastrophic healthcare costs. So you have your income that is fixed and you don't want catastrophic healthcare costs to erode or wipe out your income. So you have to protect yourself through health insurance. You also need timely access to quality healthcare. So health insurance will guarantee you access to a wide network of hospitals and specialists and timely access to care. So whenever you need healthcare, you don't have to think of, oh, how much is in my account? How much do I need to spend if I visit the doctor? Because you have health insurance, you can easily walk into any hospital, talk to your doctor, and you have timely access to healthcare. Your health insurance companies would have signed up agreements with lots of hospitals on their network. So even when you're not satisfied with a particular hospital, you can talk to them, you can switch to other hospitals. And this is what health insurance does. It also guarantees you comprehensive coverage. So when you buy a health insurance plan, you are guaranteed to have coverage for a lot of benefits on healthcare, cancer care, renal care, maternity, mental health, outpatient care, other inpatient benefits, other surgeries as well, orthopedics, a lot of benefits and coverage health insurance guarantees you. If you are to keep your money in your pocket, you cannot guarantee that if you need to undergo any orthopedic surgery that will cost you probably $1 million or $2 million, that you will be able to pay for it. But once you pay for health insurance, you are guaranteed that comprehensive coverage. Preventive health is very important. Non-communicable diseases are becoming rampant in Nigeria, especially amongst the working class population. We're talking about hypertension and diabetes, and this is driven by lifestyle factors. So health insurance benefits usually come with preventive health and wellness packages. So you can have your annual health screening done, early disease detection, and you can speak with your doctor so that you can quickly nip all these non-communicable diseases in the bud before they become full-blown and before you develop complications. And there's also the legal aspects, which Kola talked about as well. It's now mandatory in Nigeria. So you need to have health insurance. Lagos State government is driving it through LASHMA. And without health insurance, you will pay more out of pocket because they want to create an incentive for people to adopt health insurance. So if you don't have health insurance and you choose to stay out of the pool, which of course the law makes it mandatory, whenever you visit the hospital, you will pay more for healthcare rather compared to someone with health insurance. So the legal requirement is also there. So why do we need health insurance? Once again, financial protection, access to quality healthcare, comprehensive coverage, preventive health services, and of course the legal requirement. And this takes us to healthcare cost and bankruptcy. Healthcare costs is the leading cause of bankruptcy, the largest single cause of bankruptcy in America. And it's same for Nigeria as well. We've seen cases where celebrities, people who are rich, actually come out to say that, look, I have this problem, I have this challenge with health care, I need help, because they don't have health insurance. So you can have 40 million, 50 million at the beginning of the year. But I can say from experience that one case of probably renal failure or renal transplant or cancer can wipe that off in 2 or 3 months. Seen cases where people had to sell their belongings to finance healthcare. And of course, it's a vicious cycle. You continue to spend and spend and spend until bankruptcy. Catastrophic healthcare costs, of course, is from direct spending on healthcare. When you spend 40% of your non-food expenditure on healthcare. So you take a look at your income properly, your monthly income. Take a look at how much you spend on food, back it up from your income. Whenever you spend more than 40% of the non-food income or expenditure on healthcare, then you are exposed to bankruptcy and you are exposed to catastrophic healthcare costs. Same thing applies when you spend more than 10% of your total expenditure on healthcare, you are actually exposed to bankruptcy as a result of healthcare costs. So we all need to sit down, look at our finances, look at our income, look at our expenditure again to say, how much did I spend on healthcare last year, for example? If you spent more than 10% of your total expenditure on healthcare, then you have to revise your expenditure and protect yourself through health insurance. So let's look at the broader societal impact of health insurance. Why is health insurance important? Not just to you and I alone, but to the society at large. Health insurance helps to reduce health disparities. Health disparities are very, very, very common, especially in Lagos. You find a situation where someone in Lekki or Victoria Island can afford to pay 1.5 million in a hospital in Lekki for delivery or a cesarean section, for example. And in this same Lagos, someone in Ikorodu is struggling to pay 5,000 naira for antenatal care. We cannot run a society like that where we have people who can afford to pay millions of naira for healthcare and people who are actually struggling to find just 5,000 naira to pay to even buy anti-malaria drugs. So health insurance would help to cross-subsidize and try as much as possible to reduce this disparity. We also have a situation where we need to improve public health, and healthcare is population health. You can do other things alone. You can provide your own power supply with a generator. You can even tar the road in your estate. You can provide your own security. You can hire security guards. You can have dogs in your house. You can provide your own water supply through your borehole system at home. But healthcare is not for one man alone. It's population health. So if you go to the market and people there are not healthy, you go to a supermarket in Lekki and the person attending to you has an infectious disease simply because he cannot access quality healthcare to treat him or herself, then you are exposed to it. If you have a driver who has tuberculosis and cannot afford to treat himself or cannot afford to buy medications because of poor access to healthcare services and lack of health insurance, then you are also exposed. Paula mentions the issue of COVID, and we all saw how every one of us was exposed to the danger of COVID as a public health concern. Also, prevention of infectious diseases. If we don't set up a proper health insurance system, there is no way we can prevent infectious diseases in our neighborhood. Whenever we step out of our houses, we become exposed to the dangers of infectious disease and population health. Even in our church auditorium, if there are people with infectious disease that cannot treat themselves adequately because of lack of health insurance, it becomes a challenge for everyone. We also need to reduce financial burden on public health systems. I've worked with several public health facilities, teaching hospitals, general hospitals of state government, and I know the financial burden the lack of health insurance puts on these health systems. You have a hospital where people come into the hospital without money in their pockets. The hospitals have to treat them. They have to pass the cost back to the government, or they have to absorb the cost. So when we sit down and complain about lack of medication, poor salaries for healthcare workers, we also need to know that because we don't have this financial protection, some people walk into the hospital without nothing in their pocket, and we have to subsidize them. And the public healthcare system has to take care of them. Economic productivity is also a major challenge. This is linked to healthcare status. Look at the OECD countries in Europe, for example. Look at the average life expectancy. Look at the level of infectious disease in their community, and you can easily tie it to economic productivity. So you see smaller countries with 5 to 10 million population having a GDP that is twice the GDP of Nigeria. So our economic productivity is also tied to the level of healthcare services that we receive as a country. And this is where health insurance comes in. If we all have health insurance and we have access to quality healthcare, of course, economic productivity will improve. When people fall sick and they cannot go to the hospital, they cannot go to their different workplaces, level of economic productivity tend to reduce. This also affects other contributions as well, such as taxation and the ability of the government to generate substantial revenue to run the economy. What are the common concerns about health insurance that we need to address? First, people tend to feel that health insurance is not necessary if you are healthy. Yeah, everyone in Nigeria is healthy until we contract that major disease. There is a popular saying that a lot of Nigerians are just one disease away from poverty, which is very true. Cancer care, renal care, brain surgery, neurosurgery, and all that can easily wipe out all income and savings. So even if you are healthy enough, you still need health insurance. And like we saw earlier, we are contributing to a pool. So when you think you are healthy, remember that what you have contributed to the pool, you've contributed to take care of someone in that particular pool. And the day you fall sick, someone else will make a contribution to take care of you. So even if you are healthy, you still need health insurance. Health insurance covers all medical expense. No, there are plans that will not cover you for some medical expense. That's why you need to look at your exclusions carefully when you are choosing a health insurance plan. There's also this misconception that health insurance is too expensive. No, health insurance is not expensive. Paying out of pocket is more expensive. You can imagine having to pay for accident and emergency. It's not even the cost, it's the inconvenience that you have to look for money, you have to pay before service in some hospitals. But if you have health insurance, you can easily just bring out your card, talk to your health insurance company, and this will be covered. And Nigerians, as Nigerians, we need to also look at our expenditure carefully. There are plans for 100,000, and people will say that this plan is too expensive for me. Meanwhile, we buy data from telco companies, probably spend 10,000 naira every month on internet, which of course accumulatively is about 200, maybe 150,000 naira per annum. Some of us have cable TVs at home. Some of us subscribe to Netflix, to Prime, Amazon Prime, and all this little expenditure. By the time you accumulate them over a period of 12 months, you find out that they are not even up to your health insurance premium. The amount of money we spend servicing our car, the amount of money we spend on beauty packages, taking care of our hair, taking care of our nails, buying clothing, may not even be up to the amount of money we need to spend to buy a proper health insurance plan at the end of the day. And health is wealth. Whenever health becomes challenged, all those other things will not matter. You won't have the time, you won't have the luxury of even watching that TV or using that internet that you have subscribed for. Health insurance plans are the same. This is also a misconception. So I've worked with companies where people assume that, oh, health insurance plans are the same. No, you can work in bank A and another person in bank B will have a different health insurance plan because they have paid more for health insurance. While you in bank A may feel that, oh, I'm supposed to have this level of coverage. No, it depends on the premium that you have paid for health insurance. So whenever you visit the hospital, you have to look at your benefits properly. You have to look at your exclusions as well, so that you don't assume that there's a blanket coverage for health insurance. Always depends on the premium that you have paid and the benefit package that is attached to that premium, and also your exclusions. How do you choose the right plan? So we have a selection problem. We have about 56 registered health insurance companies in Nigeria. And as HR or as individuals, you tend to run into a lot of selection problems. You have to look at health insurance benefits. You have to look at the health insurance companies as well. You have to look at a network of hospitals that you want to access. You have to look at the location where your people are located, where your family resides. If you live in Lekki Axis, if you live around Ajah area, you want to look at hospitals around that area as well before you select your health insurance plan or your health insurance company that you want to deal with. You also have to look at your needs. So you have a young family, for example, or a newly wedded couple, you are planning ahead that you will need maternity services, you will need pediatric services because of your kids. You have to make sure that your health insurance plans come with those benefits. If you're in your 50s and 60s, you are very, very careful about how much you spend on chronic ailments if you have any. So you must select a plan that will cover chronic conditions. If you're a you lady, you are also very wary of gynecological issues, and you have to make sure that your health insurance benefit covers all these problems. There's also the issue of poor and generalized benefits. Health insurance companies can throw plans to you. You have to look carefully to be sure that those benefits are specific to your needs. And if you see a plan that is not specific to your needs and do not cover what you desire, you can look at other plans and you can check other health insurance companies. And there's also the issue of cost that we all need to deal with. How much budget do you have? How much do you intend to pay for health insurance? If you have a family of 4, how much can you spare from your income on a monthly basis? And then you have to select a plan that matches your cost. Poor service delivery, of course, we need to go for a health insurance company that with a reputation for quality service delivery. And of course, digitization is very important. You have to select health insurance companies with the capacity to use technology to drive a lot of their services. So you don't want to go to the hospital and the hospital is searching for your name on a piece of paper. They cannot confirm if you are eligible for a particular service or not, or if you are even active on the health insurance scheme. This, of course, will lead to several denial of care if the health insurance companies are not tech savvy. Knowledge is also very important. You have to continue to update yourself with industry knowledge. There are health insurance companies that are not as good as they used to be. There are health insurance companies that are bankrupt. They are not solvent enough to pay their claims. There are certain things that you need to know about the industry. So you have to equip yourself as HR, head of HR, or as individuals. You can work with certain entities who will provide you with the needed knowledge or guidance to make this selection. So in summary, health insurance is now mandatory in Nigeria. It's compulsory that we all have health insurance. It's not just for us alone, it's for the society at large. We need to have health insurance. And this will be driven by state and federal laws. If you're in Lagos State government, and we all know how Lagos State can be very aggressive with their policies and plans. So you have to make that transition from out-of-pocket payments now to health insurance. You can buy individual health insurance plans, or if you have a company or a business that has not subscribed to health insurance, because of this law, you have to subscribe to health insurance. I've spoken about the broader societal impact. We cannot continue to live in isolation. Healthcare cannot be tackled in isolation. You can provide water for yourself. You can provide your own electricity. You can go off grid with solar. You can buy your SUVs because your estate is always flooded. So you can do all these things to escape the reality. But in healthcare, you cannot, because every day you step out of your house, or if you have a living maid, you have a driver, you have all your domestic staff, you meet people in church, you meet people in the market, you meet people in the office, you are exposed to that societal impact of healthcare. And the only way to guarantee that we will have a healthy society is when we have health insurance that guarantees affordable and accessible healthcare services. Out-of-pocket expenditure is very, very bad. At 77%, it is unsustainable. It will lead a lot of Nigerians to bankruptcy and to financial instability. Inflation is already biting hard on our income. Companies are struggling to increase wages. Even the government is struggling to increase remuneration for government workers. The only way to ensure financial stability, let me not say the only way, the way to ensure financial stability, one of the ways to ensure financial stability is to ensure that we subscribe to health insurance so that you can be sure that you are not exposed to catastrophic healthcare costs. And these things are very, very real. In our society today, based on our lifestyle factors, tons of hours in traffic, exposure to toxins, poor dietary habits, lack of sleep, and a lot of things that predisposes us to ill health, especially non-communicable diseases such as hypertension and diabetes. We need to be sure that we have health insurance so that we can stop spending money out of pocket and we can allocate resources to other aspects of our lives. So when you have health insurance, you can be sure that nothing is going to wipe out 300,000 from your wallet before the end of the year. So you can, of course, devote that to education. You can devote that to your rent. You can devote that to other aspects of your life. And that is where health insurance becomes very, very essential in terms of financial stability and bankruptcy. Also, for a lot of us with dependents, people will come to you to say, oh, my wife is sick, I need help. Just at the beginning of the year, just ensure that you get health insurance for them. One thing I did for my driver was to buy health insurance of 30,000 naira for him, just to ensure that he stops coming to me for the random 20,000 naira, 15,000 naira, 5,000 naira. There are times that I don't even know if he's saying the truth or not, but I know that I have bought health insurance for him and I have solved his healthcare challenges. These are the things that you can also do to ensure that people don't come in to ask you for money for healthcare, especially your dependents, your people in villages, people that really depend on you to fund their healthcare expenditure. Thank you very much for listening. I'll hand over back to Lois now to take the questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Otisoji, for that super impactful session. I'm sure that just like me, everyone found that really enlightening. Thank you. Thank you so much. There was so much packed in the few minutes that you spent. You know, I was actually surprised at the amount spent on malaria each year. It's funny because even for those of us that have health insurance, many times we think, oh, I'll just buy anti-malaria myself. You know, I won't bother going to the hospital. And to see the figures of what making those choices have and how much we're actually expending on little things because we're not utilizing the benefits of health insurance. That was really helpful to see. Thank you for that. I think all of us got the warning and the reminder to, you know, check how much we actually spend on healthcare costs. Homework for everyone from this session to do that and to, you know, check, because the thought of being one illness away from bankruptcy is actually quite scary. You know, you think you've worked all these years, you put all the savings, and really you just need one thing to come and to change the story. So the importance really for us to checkmate what our expense at the moment on healthcare is and ensure that we're putting things in place to make sure that we're not in that situation. I think we all know or we hear of stories of celebrities and people who come on social media to request for donations because of renal failure or one of these other things, and it stems from here. You know, it's just one illness away, and if celebrities that we know make probably a lot more money than the average person here can fall into that situation, how much more us? So thank you for those reminders from your session. I think another thing I found super impactful from yours was the showing us the link, you know, the societal, mixing social and society, the societal impact of health insurance, how it's all interwoven, you know, how we are all connected. It's easy to think of our own healthcare needs, but which is, you know, it's part of what we do as a foundation, is the reminder that we are responsible for other people too, and yeah, putting something in a pool that not only helps you, but can also help other people. And I think that was really helpful. When you mentioned that when you two are in a position where you have other people who can help. So even if it's only if you don't care so much about yourself, you can care for somebody else who, by being able to do that, you can actually make an impact in someone's life. That was helpful, but also, you know, just the reduction of disparity, that everyone can have access to healthcare as a result of that. I think we saw during COVID, really how interrelated all of our lives are. And that reminder here, this last comment that you mentioned as well about how people who depend on us, our domestic staff, our people in those situations, this is a great opportunity and a great thing that we can actually do to support people around us and to intervene in the lives of people. So thank you for that. Two other things you pointed out, the fact that the premiums are different, and it's important for us to actually check the premiums to understand our needs when selecting whichever healthcare plan we choose to go for. So that's super important. And I think the last thing, was the fact that there are actually a variety of available plans. So we need to really know what we're choosing for, which one we're choosing. I was going to ask a question, but I think we have a few questions that may cover this, so I would skip that. But I have one question for Mr. Kola before we go into the Q&A properly with the questions that we have. Mr. Kola, thank you for your time as well. Thank you, Dr. Tokunbo, as well, for your time and for reminding us, but not just reminding us, teaching us, because there's so much here that we didn't know about. And you both mentioned the NHIS, the government plan. Mr. Kola, what really do you think that the government needs to put in place to ensure that this NHIS gets to the grassroots? We are here, we're having these conversations in a webinar. There are so many people who cannot have this same level of access to webinars. What is something what does the government need to do to ensure that everyone can really have this level of access to the NHIS?
Okay, thank you so much. I think the first thing is to have this law. So we actually need to commend the fact that we already have a law that essentially mandates that everyone should have health insurance in Nigeria. This was exactly how the pension reform that we have in the country today was started. Now we're at the operationalization stage, and this is where questions like this are coming up. I think number one is that government itself should adopt insurance as the focal point for all of our interventions. Today, I think Nigeria receives nothing less than maybe $500 million to $1 billion from different developmental agencies. Some will say that they are fighting polio, some it's malaria, some it's this. I think government should tell all of them that the way we want to break the cycle of out-of-pocket payments in Nigeria is at the point of insurance, not at the point of care. And we can mobilize a lot of these DFIs who are ready to support Nigeria to actually support us by adopting communities and providing care for them. The second thing is that government itself actually spends so much money on healthcare. Understand? So governments can make sure that certain services that are provided by the government, you are only able to access those services when you have actually, purchased health insurance. And otherwise, you are not going to be able to afford those services because it's like a law, it's a mandatory thing. It's the only way for you to show that you are not a burden on the society. The third thing we can do is to have like a system of matching grants where we identify the proper cost of the insurance, but over a 2 to 3 year period, government actually matches people's contribution, some sort of subsidy, and we take out that subsidy over time till we get to a point whereby we can actually pull it out completely. At the end of the day, we'll probably never achieve 100% coverage immediately, but with some of these steps, we can actually significantly grow adoption from the current BISMA levels of about 10% to something more substantial. Thank you, Lois.
Thank you. Okay, so Sori will take over, take us through the question and answer session.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Kola and Dr. Titoju. I think, again, I think that I have even been the biggest benefactor of this webinar. So we have a couple of questions in our Q&A already. We'll take questions from here. I think the first question I have out question, and the question is, what's the implication for someone who is already using a partner's insurance plan? By partner, I assume that the person is asking, so I'm using my spouse's insurance plan. Will I need to get another one under the new law? I remember that it was mentioned here that under the new state laws, it will be mandatory for each individual citizen to get an insurance. So this question here is, if I'm using my spouse's, will I need to get one for myself? I think, Mr. Kola, please, could you take this question?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Did you get the question?
No, can you please?
Okay, so someone is asking if they currently use their partner's insurance plan,
yes,
under the new state laws,
yeah,
will they need to get a standalone plan for themselves?
Yes,
when the law is implemented?
Yes, they will. Everybody will need to get, when you say you're using your partner's plan, what typically happens is that your partner's office allows them to include their spouse and children on their plan. So what it actually means is that your partner's company has bought a plan for you. So what the law would determine now is that you will need to buy, everybody will need to be on that basic law, on that basic plan from their state. So once you're on that plan, your partner can still go ahead and buy a top-up plan for you through their company. But the desire of the law is that everybody should be on the plan. And I suspect that if for all those who have private health insurance now, it means that they are gainfully employed in a well-established organization. It probably means that they are outside of the poverty range in the country. For the insurance scheme to work, all such people, they are like the low-hanging fruits. They are like the people that can easily be told to buy, 20,000 naira insurance per annum, and they will just pay for it. So they are part of the scheme. So you may be anywhere in the country or in the state, and you're involved in an accident and you're not close to your hospital and things like that. You're actually going to be able to use a government hospital with your BVN or your NIN. Or some people at the airports, something happens. Healthcare goes beyond just going to a hospital. There are several people who have been at clubs or in their banking hall or something like that, and they just collapse, and nobody's going to start asking you if you're on an international plan at that moment in time. They want to rush you to the nearest hospital, and that means you would have benefited from government care. For the society to be sustainable, we must have a network of government hospitals that can actually be supported with this pool of insurance so that they can provide care to everybody. So everybody that can afford it should actually plan to pay for that base scheme provided by the government, whether you want to use it or not. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kola. I think that succinctly answers the question. I have another question for you again, Mr. Kola, and this is coming from Facebook. and I'm very vested in this question actually, because it's something that I would also like to know. Can I get and the person is asking, can I get a refund or some kind of compensation at the end of the year if I don't access or I don't use the insurance at the end of that year, in 5 years? Like Lloyd said, if I have a headache, I just go to the pharmacy and buy paracetamol rather than go to the hospital. So people who are consistently paying this health insurance through their employers but are not using it, are there any ways to claw back some amount that they've paid over a period of time? Mr. Kola.
Okay. I think the first thing is, as I mentioned, is the insurance premium that you have paid is actually payment for your peace of mind. And you've enjoyed that peace of mind, so to say, even if you have not gone to the hospital. However, there are a couple of insurance schemes globally that actually reward you they don't reward you for not going to the hospital, because they don't know whether you're going to go to the hospital in a few years' time, but they reward you for good behavior. So, for instance, there are new means of insurance coming up where you wear your watch, and if you can show evidence that you are meeting your step goals and you're meeting your exercise goals, you're actually going to get points. Because, I mentioned something about actuarial pricing. It's a very complex thing, knowing what a particular person should actually pay for insurance. But as the information is getting better and we're beginning to know what can actually reduce the chances of people going to the hospital, insurance companies are coming up with schemes that allows you to get benefits and rewards for good behavior. A very popular one is Vitality in the UK. So depending on, if you go to the gym very well, they would actually give you points, and you can use those points to do other health-related things. So you can use the points to buy health-related foods. You can use the points to buy exercise equipment or things like that. But you can't use the points to buy alcohol. You can't use the points to buy things. Then, of course, you can get certain discounts. You can get certain discounts on your next insurance purchase if you have demonstrated that you've actually taken active efforts to make your health better. Not just by luck that, I didn't go to the hospital, because you didn't go to the hospital, it may just be that you were lucky. And if they give you the money back this year, give you a little bit of the money back, what happens if in 2 years' time you now become the one who has actually used the insurance the most?
Right.
Are you going to be prepared to pay a lot more at that time? And those are the balancing things. So it's possible, but it's mostly to reward good behavior, not just to give you money for not showing up. Yes.
Right. Thank you. And again, a follow-up question. Do we have any organizations that have implemented that in Nigeria just yet, or this is happening in other countries? Do you have any idea?
Not to my knowledge. If any company has implemented that, what a lot of insurance companies in Nigeria try to do is that they bundle certain health benefits with your package. So they give you gym access. So a lot of insurance companies in Nigeria are realizing that they should actually give you gym access, not because they package it as a benefit, but actually it's because they know that if you use the gym very well, you are less likely to go to the hospital over time, and you improve their portfolio. But I'm not aware of anyone who has been advanced enough to the point where they're actually giving you points for health-seeking behavior. But don't forget that under the new scheme, a lot of the basic things that people go to the hospital for, like malaria, a lot of these things, they would actually be covered under the NHIS and state scheme. And the private insurance companies will need to go for more of the complex lifestyle type of diseases in their coverage. So it's something that I suspect is going to come into the future because it's already existent. We just need to copy and adapt it a little bit to our environment.
Right. This is very interesting. Thank you very much. I'll just go on to the next question, and this is for Dr. Tokunbo. And I'll read what the guest has typed here. She says, in my experience, there's been significant, well, she starts with, or he or she starts with, I'm both a provider and a user of health insurance. In my experience, there's been significant issues using HMO. Number one, HMO will offer to pay, for example, $250,000 for a major surgery like cesarean section and myomectomy, forgive me, a cost that will barely cover the use of quality hospital consumables. I have seen providers purchase substandard consumables or medications to break even. On the flip side, some hospitals will refuse access to certain HMO packages because of this type of pricing. So the question, how can this be addressed so that patients are given the best for their health? Second question, what is the ethics of increasing the premium of a client by the HMO due to usage? Does the HMO expect people to continue to pay without usage? Number three, health problems such as cancer, need for ICU, infertility treatments, not just investigations, are usually excluded. Is there an ethical way around this, Dr. Tokunbo? So you have 3 questions to answer. Do you need me to summarize the questions again, or do you get that?
No, I can actually see the questions on
fantastic.
on the Q&A.
Right.
Yes,
right,
so,
okay.
so the first one is cost of major surgeries and how the HMOs barely cover these costs and the challenge with providers having to work within the cost that the HMO has provided to provide healthcare services. Like we said earlier, it's a function of the amount of money paid as premiums. Because health insurance is not mandatory in Nigeria, was not mandatory in Nigeria, the market was opened to people who would grudgingly want to pay for health insurance. So health insurance companies were actually competing on who can provide the cheapest benefits and premiums compared to the actual cost of providing these services. So you see health insurance packages at 30,000 naira in Nigeria that will cover for outpatient care, that will still cover for inpatient care without an element of co-payment whatsoever. This is very, very rare in any part of the world to find that kind of benefit where less than maybe $50, $60 per annum, like $5 per month, to cover you extensively for outpatient care without co-payment, cover you for the cost of surgery. So we really have to be honest with ourselves, and this is where the regulators should also come in. What does it cost to actually provide these services? Whenever you go to any health insurance company and they throw a 30,000 naira package with lots of benefits, no co-payment, outpatient care all covered and all that, the regulator must look into the actuarial computation that Kola mentioned. How did you arrive at this pricing? How can you guarantee this payment? Are you going to pay the hospital? How did you factor in all the consumables and everything that the hospital will use? Because our regulator does not actually pick up products to look into the actuarial pricing, anybody can throw anything at you. And when you get to the hospital, they start telling stories. We need to be very, very honest with ourselves. Healthcare is very expensive everywhere in the world, in the UK, in the US. A friend of mine talked about Estonia, where share has to pay 33% social tax, 13% health insurance tax. The employer pays 20%. And on top of that, she pays 21% personal income tax again, just to provide social services such as healthcare. So it's really very expensive. What health insurance does is to make it affordable and accessible for everyone. So whenever you see any health insurance plan that looks ridiculously cheap, you need to investigate further so that you won't pay for something and then you get to the hospital and you have to now pay when the reality sets in. There are some health insurance plans that will guarantee complete payments without limits for surgeries. And those ones are usually very expensive, probably 100,000 to 200,000 per annum. But a lot of people on the lower plans usually have these limits. And the health insurance company is trying to limit their exposure. You get, yeah, a lot of them are working blindly without data. So when I sell health insurance, a health insurance plan to you, I don't know if you need a myomectomy the next day, and I've given you a plan for 20,000 naira. I have to limit my exposure. Either I cap my exposure to 250,000 naira to say, look, I know that I'm going to make a loss, maybe, but I don't want to go above this limit, or I even cap the overall limit. It depends on what you are buying and what you're paying for. But I would say that you have to scrutinize the cost of these benefits. You need to talk to the health insurance company to be sure that what they are offering you is enough to take care of all your healthcare expenditure. The ethics of increasing premiums of a client due to usage. So it's a standard because even if they don't increase it, the provider, the hospital will increase tariff because of medical inflation. And the health insurance company cannot warehouse this cost. Year on year, everybody increases prices. Bread will increase from 1,000 naira to 1,005 because of inflation. Food will increase, rent increase, transportation costs will increase. The cost of providing healthcare services will also increase. So even without usage, your health insurance company will factor in for medical inflation the coming year, because they know that the cost of salaries have gone up with hospitals, cost of medications have gone up with hospitals, cost of consumables, a lot of them are dollar dependent. Right now, we've moved from 450 to about 800 naira. All these things are imported. We still don't have that capacity to manufacture locally. So when they cost your health insurance premiums, it's not even based on usage alone. They need to factor in all this increase in price based on inflation. Then as per usage, if your usage is very, very high and there are no mechanisms to protect them, like co-payments, like capitation plans, to say, look, we are exposed to high cost here. We've charged 1 million naira in payments and we have spent 4 million naira as claims. Health insurance companies are also businesses. They are not there to write losses. They have to report to the investors and to their board. So the only thing they can do is to say, we made 110% loss on this organization. That means that we need to reprice the risk, considering every other thing remains the same in economics, that everything is the same. These people will go to the hospital and incur this level of claims the next year. So when they look at their data, if they cannot find anywhere to remove some of the risk, they cannot find anywhere to cap some of their risk, they need to reprice. So usually based on your usage, and even in the US, when your usage is high, the health insurance company will price you accordingly. And that is why to stop this galloping repricing inflation in healthcare, a lot of health insurance companies in advanced markets will try to pass the cost to the customer, either through co-payment or deductibles. So when you have a co-payment, when you go to the hospital and you have to pay like 15% of the bill, or when you have a deductible of, let's say, $1,000 or $2,000, it helps to stabilize the market and you don't have to reprice every year. But usage, medical inflation, are valid reasons to always reprice premium year on year. Yes, you have to pay without usage because, like Ola said, it's the guarantee that you have peace of mind. I've been paying my car insurance for the past 10 years. I've not had an accident. I don't wish to have an accident. I will not stop paying my car insurance because I did not have an accident last year. And it is not my desire to go and crash my car because I've paid health car insurance. I pay for my house insurance as well. I don't hope that my building will collapse next year, but I still have to pay it. So even without usage, people pay for life insurance, and you can't kill yourself because you paid for life insurance. You continue to pay until that time. You understand? So it's the same thing with healthcare. There is no difference. You are providing that level of assurance that whenever anything happens to you, you don't have to dip your hands into your pocket and you have that peace of mind. So without usage, you still have to continue to pay for health insurance because you don't know when you will need it. Actually, insurance has to be paid. It's mandatory. And don't forget that you're also contributing to a pool. So if we have a pool for Pistis Foundation, for example, even if you don't use the health insurance, we have paid for the cesarean section of someone that just gave birth. You've helped that person pay for the vaccination. So if you contribute 30,000 naira as Pistis Foundation, someone in Pistis Foundation has gone to the hospital to have a cesarean section of 300,000 naira. The difference between what that person paid, that's the 270,000 naira, was contributed by those who did not use that healthcare, from me, from any other person. So we are contributing to a pool. You cannot remove yourself out of the pool. The day you will need to pay 1 million naira, despite the fact that you paid 30,000 naira for health insurance, they will also take from other people who did not use that health insurance. So it's a typical, it's a simple analogy. The healthy pays for the sick in health insurance. If we are all sick, there won't be any reason for health insurance because there won't be a way to pool resources. We all need to spend 5 million naira every year for our health. There is no healthy person to pay for it. So in health insurance, it's the healthy that pays for the sick. And I, as a person, I prefer to be on the healthy side, paying for those who are sick, than to be on that other side where I have to now be at the mercy of doctors and every other person who will have to take care of me. I can guarantee you that it is always good to be on that healthy side. Don't worry about what your money is used for. Believe me, people are actually going through a lot. Cancer care, renal care, that will pay any amount to just be on that healthy side where you are and to contribute to that pool. Health problems such as cancer, ICU, infertility treatments are usually excluded. As I said earlier, you need to look at your exclusions carefully, and you need to, even if your health insurance company does not offer these services or they are excluded, you can ask them to price the exposure to these services. So infertility treatment, for example, for a young couple, ICU care, you can ask them to price it so that they can actually increase your premium a little bit so that you can be covered for these services. In Lagos, the average cost of ICU care per day is heading towards maybe 1 million naira now. So if you buy a plan without ICU care and you're in your 40s and 50s, 1 week in ICU can wipe out your entire savings. So you have to tell them that, okay, how can you price ICU care into this product? Same for infertility treatment. What level of infertility treatment can we get and how can you price it so that I can have this extensive coverage? Yes, it is ethical, except if you are dealing with the government. The government has, of course, the NHIS plan, which is a social form of health insurance. The NHIS can make losses. They will write it back to their budgets the next year, or they will dip into the government reserves to fund all those losses. But for a health insurance company limited by liability, I guess, and if you pay 50,000 naira and you want, let's say if you pay 20,000 naira and you want infertility treatment that we all know starts from about 5 million naira to maybe 10 million naira, or ICU care for 1 week that can go up 15 million naira. I mean, they're going to sack someone in their underwriting or actuarial department if they sell that kind of product, because that exposure is too huge. So it's not unethical. It's just a smart business decision to say that we cannot guarantee this kind of exposure because we are paying this amount of premium. So if you pay the right amount of premium, you should get all these services. I think I've answered all the questions.
Yeah, Dr. Tokes, yes, you have answered, but it's led to one or two more questions. And the first one is, and maybe this is just for the clarity of guests here. Imagine that, again, going back to ICU or fertility, right? Imagine that we have a person who's consistently paid their premiums for what, 10 years and has never used it, right? But has now, 10 years later, now has to use the ICU, right? So I haven't used, I've paid consistently 10 years, I've never used. And then the 11th year, I now have an emergency where I have to use the ICU. Are there considerations for people, for these types of people, or it's use it or lose it until you need to use it again? Will there be those considerations? Because I remember during the session, I know that you mentioned the different types of coverages, the bronze and all that. So this individual is under the bronze package where ICU is not part of what you get, but I've consistently paid for 10 years and now I need ICU. Are there any considerations for people like that?
Yes, so some insurance companies can actually grant they can give you what we call ex gratia to say, okay, this has been a loyal customer for 10 years. They look at the risk, what does it cost versus what we have earned from this customer over 10 years. And they can actually make that adjustment looking at their pool. Maybe a one-off case or 2 cases or 3 cases in a year, they have that kind of reserve to take care of that. But it is not something that they can do for everybody. Your health insurance policy terminates after 1 year. So technically, it is not a contribution that accumulates over a period of time like your pensions. So in fact, when you pay your health insurance policy premiums to a particular health insurance company for 1 year, it does not mean that the health insurance company is in a stable financial position the next year. Some of them, they can write losses. So they cannot say because you paid for last year or you paid consistently for 5 years, they're in a very stable financial position to grant you that. But they can look into their books to say, we can pick up this case as a one-off based on this customer, because the customer has been a healthy customer. Customer has been contributing to the health insurance pool, and then we can grant that as ex gratia. But they cannot do it for everyone. They always have that reserve, what we call claims reserve, that they can look into and they can pull from their claims reserve to take care of such cases. But when we contribute to health insurance, it's usually health insurance is a short-term insurance policy. It's 1 year. After that 1 year, you wipe the slate and you start all over again. You start the contribution all over again. Because last year in healthcare, 2 days can make a difference. You can go to bed today. Let me not use you as an example. Someone can go to bed today and wake up with a stroke tomorrow. So you can't and healthcare is it's not like your car that you can say, oh, this car, I can guarantee that this car is going to serve me for 5 years. You cannot guarantee that you will have that healthcare, in that your health status intact for 5 years. You can twist your ankle this evening, So it's usually a very short-term policy. So your contribution is wiped out after 1 year and you have to start all over again. But for people on individual and family plans, you have to ensure that you sign up with a health insurance company and looks at your health records over the years and they are able to price you based on your exposure. So if you contribute consistently to health insurance, they need to look at your health risk over a period of time. And after 5 years, they need to look at your loss ratio and your risk and say, okay, this person is healthy enough for us to be able to accommodate more benefits, or for us to be able to reduce the premium, whichever one they want. So you have to work with those types of health insurance companies. That's for individual and family health insurance. For the group one, it's the same, but it is very risky. They may not be able to lower your insurance because you did not use it, but they may be able to accommodate other benefits.
Right. So the last question on this topic, imagine that we have a person who now has some kind of life-threatening surgery, right? And the person's the person's insurance can cover it. But that particular surgery has taken a chunk of, it's an expensive, let me say it's very expensive, right? Does this form grounds for the person's premiums to be increased afterwards? Or the person continues on the same premium, continues to pay the same premium after that major surgery? How does that work?
Yeah, so 2 cases, individual policies and employee-sponsored corporate policies. So let's look at company A, for example. Company A's premium is 100 million. This person had a surgery, about 10 million. Overall health insurance expenditure on company A is at maybe 80 million. All right. The health insurance company will look at the loss ratio and say, oh, I'm still fine. This is a one-off, because for all your health insurance premiums and healthcare benefits, they make provisions for large claims. There are always provisions for large claims. I'm talking about standard health insurance companies. There are other companies that will just write some benefits and just attach a premium to it and start selling in the market. I'm talking about structured health insurance companies with a structured actuarial department with proper underwriters. You have to make provisions for large claims. So when such occurs, they are not shaking. They know that, okay, yes, in a population of 1,000 persons, one person will have one large claim that we're expecting, right? So when that happens, if it does not tilt their books into that red zone, they can allow it to, but they will continue to watch that portfolio, because now they have one person existing, right? If another person joins the portfolio, then it becomes a problem. Or maybe the third person joins the portfolio, it becomes a problem. So maybe in the second or third year, they may try to increase the premium based on the fact that they already know that they have one person existing, they have another person coming in, but usually the first or second year, they usually don't increase the premium like that for group policies, because everybody makes provisions for large claims. For individual plans, it's very tough, especially in Nigeria. They may have to reprice your policy, but usually it's really not, it's still fair compared to the exposure. So let's assume that we have Mr. A. Mr. A pays a premium of 100,000 naira. Mr. A does not have any pre-existing condition. Suddenly, Mr. A goes to the hospital for his annual wellness check, and he discovered that, oh, Mr. A has colorectal cancer. Cost of treating colorectal cancer is about 5 million, right? Mr. HMO needs to pay 5 million to treat this man. This man has paid 200,000 in premiums, but he has contributed to a pool of an individual portfolio in the HMO that is about maybe 1 billion naira. You understand? Or let's even say, let's be realistic, maybe 200 million naira. And then Mr. A, HMO can look at Mr. A and say, okay, we'll take care of you because this condition did not exist ab initio. We'll take care of your expenses. Then at the end of the year, the HMO knows that Mr. A now has colorectal cancer that will cost another 5 to 10 million naira. But we are going to throw Mr. A in a pool of that has 200 million. So we'll spread the risk of Mr. A's additional 10 million naira on that 200 million, which probably would be maybe about 100 people. So you'll see that Mr. A, instead of taking the entire 5 million naira burden on himself to say that we are just passing the cost back to you, the HMO will now spread that 5 million naira burden on everybody on the pool because they want to stabilize the pool if the pool is bad. So you will now find out that rather than Mr. A taking the burden of 5 million, you will now find that probably 50,000 naira will be shared to Mr. A. Others will also maybe get 10,000 naira increase in premium based on the pool. I'm just using these figures. It may not be up to that at all. So they are able to spread the risk of Mr. A across everybody on the pool. Some people will fight back to say, no, why is my premium going up? And this is one of the challenges that the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare Act, faced in the US, because the law mandated health insurance companies in the US to take care of people with chronic ailments. Now, I am a healthy person. I'm struggling in the US, struggling to pay my rent, struggling to pay my other bills. But my health insurance company, let's call it company B, has taken up 10 people with kidney problems. Now they have to transfer the cost of those 10 people to me because I have to pay increase year on year based on those 10 people. So we'll have that particular challenge, which I don't think we've been able to solve. So one of the ways of trying to solve this problem is to also look at the government reserve to say, when you have someone with this kind of challenge, you have to pull this person out. The government must allocate resources to specific diseases that can tilt the losses or cost losses in the insurance company. Yes. So Nigeria should at least have a cancer care fund where people can be on queue to say, if you have cancer, rather than the health insurance companies taking up the burden, the government can allocate specific amount of money to take care of people with cancer. It's done in France. It's done in some of other European countries where the government allocates money strategically for all these cases that usually impact health insurance costs. So once you have that kind of challenge, you are pulled out from the health insurance scheme and you are thrown into the government fund. The government can take losses. The worst they will do is to print money to cover those losses and to take care of people. You understand? But health insurance companies have to stay alive.
Right. Thank you. I think that answers that question very well. A few other questions with Mr. Kola has dropped the response on the chat. I'll just read it out very quickly. Someone asks, as a public servant, Lagos State government has health insurance policy for all civil servants, but I know it's not as robust as some of the private company ones. So can I buy extra as an individual? And can it be lump sum yearly, like 40K, 50K? And Mr. Kola said, yes, absolutely, you can buy. You can buy multiple policies. And he's gone ahead to say that the new NHIS Act will most likely make this practice common going forward. Opemipo had a question to say, how are children covered under the new insurance law? And Mr. Kola is saying that, yes, they're covered. They will buy policies, or their parents will buy policies for them as individuals. And he's also stated that typically claims by children are also giving higher premiums or higher priority, I'm not sure, than some adults.
No, there are claims. Some children actually have children can actually come up with a lot of claims.
Right.
Sometimes even more than adults. So there's always that misconception that maybe their pricing should be way cheaper because of the size of their bodies.
Right. I see what you mean. So we have 3 more questions. We'll just run through them very quickly for the brevity of time. Let me see. So there's a question here for Dr. Tokes. It says, what health insurance plans can we go and look into? And this is like a call to action. So after this webinar, do you have recommendations of the health insurance plans that we can go and get more information on? Dr. Tokumbo.
Yes, but before you start shopping for plans, you really need to look into your budget and how much you want to allocate to healthcare. When you look at your budget, typically now food takes about 50%. I looked at the CPI basket again for Nigeria. Food takes about 50%, then transportation, education, then other variables. But look at your budget once again. Healthcare should be priority. How much do you intend to spend on health insurance? Please don't look at it in the sense that you're throwing the money and you have to consume it, or you may need to withdraw it. It's not, you're not saving it. It's not a savings account. Look at other things that you spend money on. There are other little things in the house. Someone like me now, I have Netflix, I have Amazon Prime, I have DSTV that I pay for. I barely sit in front of the TV. And I don't know, it's probably just an obsession, or I've not been able to break free from the addiction that I just need to pay for these things because I want to have them. So you have what you want and what you need. You need healthcare. Try and prioritize and know how much you can contribute on a monthly basis so that you can buy the premium. It also depends on your family size. How many people do you have in your family? If you're a family of 4 or 5, of course, your budget will go up. So when you are done with your budgeting, now look at do a health needs assessment for yourself. The type of hospital that you want to use, where you stay is also very important. Looking at a hospital that shouldn't be more than 30 minutes from where you stay, very good hospital, more than 20 minutes or 30 minutes from where you stay. You don't have to travel long distance. People travel all the way from the mainland to the island. I mean, in emergency situations, that's not effective enough. Your primary health care center. And when I say primary health care, I'm not just talking about government alone. I'm talking about even private facilities who can offer primary health care to you. Should be within 30 minutes drive. Maximum, you should be able to get to the hospital with traffic and other factors. So when you look at that, then you want to know where the hospital is placed on the network of your health insurance, of each of the health insurance providers, and what plan you can buy so that you can access those hospitals. Then you look at secondary care. So if I need a surgery now, which hospital am I going to use? Because your primary healthcare hospital, the one just beside you, may not be able to handle the complexities of surgery. So you're looking at maybe a major hospital on the island, or a major hospital on the island, or on the mainland that can guarantee quality healthcare. If my wife needs to deliver through a cesarean section, which hospital can I use? So when you look at that, you now have an understanding of the kind of plan that you need and how much you need to spend. Then you now go to the HMO itself, which HMOs can guarantee this particular hospital for secondary care, this hospital for primary care, this plan with this benefit at this amount. And when you now select the HMOs, then you now have to do your own individual survey. Which of them can guarantee quality service? You look at maybe the top 10 HMOs in the market. You try to do your own mystery shopping. Walk into any of the big hospitals, just talk to them. What do you feel about this HMO? What do you feel about that HMO? And you can now have an idea of the HMO that you can use. But I don't want to drop names, and I don't want to push a particular HMO so that you won't come back and say, Dr. Tokumbo mentioned on this webinar that I should buy this plan, and now this HMO is messing me up. But I can assure you that there are 2 or 3 of them that are very good in the market. I've worked with some of them. So if you go back to my bio, you can make something out of that. Some of my colleagues are also managing some of those HMOs. So if you look at, just try and trace trace that this simple, how will I put it, analogy. So look at the ones that I have worked with, look at the ones that are headed by some of my colleagues that we used to work together, we built the leading HMO in Nigeria, and then you can make your choice. So if any of them try to mess you up in terms of service, come back and hold me. I'll hold them immediately. Those ones I can guarantee.
Dr. Tokes, thank you for that. I totally
do you have anything to say? I can't just throw names, but I can guarantee
you have dodged the bullet very well.
So truthfully, Dr. Tokes, I totally relate with what you just said. My husband and I have 2 health insurances, right? And every time I took my kids to the hospital and I presented insurance X, you would see the hospital staff say, madam, you wait, we have to check, and all those kind of things. And once they started to delay me, I would flash my husband's HMO and it was Express. So I totally relate to what you're saying, because yes, there are some HMOs that are better. There are HMOs, but there are some HMOs that are better than some, and it's not necessarily because of the premiums. I think some just prioritize that they want to do this thing, they want to do it very well, because they will still waste your time, but the way that they relate with the hospital, maybe in terms of payments, or I don't know what those back end things are, but there are a few that the hospitals will just start to make faces and all of those things, and there are a few that it's Express. So I totally relate with what you're saying. We have run out of time, but just one last question for you, Dr. Tokes, but there's another question that Mr. Kola has responded to. I'll just talk through that very quickly.
He's responded to both of them, so we can just take both of them from the, yes.
Okay, so
yes,
the question.
Just trying to save time.
Thank you.
That's fine. Great. Thank you. This is most appreciated. The question was, can we use HMOs in pharmacies? Because the follow-up was sometimes in hospitals don't have the drugs and they ask you to get it from outside. Do HMOs cover this as well? And Mr. Kola, you've responded to say yes. You need certain drugs repeatedly. Most HMOs now link you to their pharmacy benefit scheme so that you don't need to go to the hospital every time, but you just go to the nearest pharmacy under their scheme. So that question has been sorted. The last question, I'm not sure. Lois, do you have, I think there was a final question here that I can't find. Can you see it?
No, I don't seem to be able to see it.
I see it. So it says the question was, why doesn't health insurance pay for all medical expense? For example, there are some not so expensive dental surgeries that some health insurance won't cover. And Mr. Kola, you've answered that to say it depends on your policy. Some plans cover dental surgeries, but may not cover cosmetic dental procedures. The lower plans may exclude dental completely. As mentioned, it depends on the pricing. Also, some dental procedures are cosmetic. Example, scaling and polishing. Well, I'm not sure about that, but it's not cosmetic, it's on a needs basis. And even dentures, such benefits can only be available for higher plans. So I think that answers that question. For the brevity of time, I'll just hand over to Lois to just talk us through. Just appreciate everyone for being here. On my side, thank you very much. It's been an interesting time, a time well spent. Thank you, Mr. Kola, and thank you, Dr. Tokumbo, and everyone who's here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Lois, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone here. Thank you for staying with us for over close to 2.5 hours, and for being patient to stay till the end. I trust that you found this as enlightening as we all have, even though we have health insurances, but there's been so much to learn from it. If you know of anyone who would benefit from this and missed out on it, they don't need to worry about it. We're going to have this uploaded on our YouTube channel, hopefully by the end of today, latest tomorrow. Our YouTube channel is at PISTISFDN, PISTISFDN. So you can share that with them. We'll also send you an email with that information so that you can share it with anyone who might have missed this. But also, if you want to learn more about what we do at the foundation, you want to receive notifications to learn about our other programs, future webinars, then please follow us on social media. Again, all of our social media handles, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, they are all at Pistis FDN. I think our Threads account is just about coming up. So please follow us on all of them. Our website as well is available, so you can check us out on pistisfoundation.org for more information about us, or to sign up for our newsletters. But again, I'm sure you would want me on our behalf, to say a huge thank you to Mr. Kola Oni and Dr. Olatokunbo Otitoju. There's been so much information today. The wealth of information has been exceptional. We are extremely grateful. We're very thankful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the information you've shared. Thank you for the recommendations you've made. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Please, let's put our hands together for them. The virtual clap as much as we can.
Virtual clap. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Kumbo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, I couldn't have done this without my co-moderator, Mrs. Sowari Akosuyondu. Thank you so much for your time, for doing this along with us. And for everyone present here, those here, those on Instagram, on Facebook, watching us, thank you for taking out the time out of your busy Saturday to spend with us. The health teams and the communication team of Pistis Foundation, thank you so much, and management and everyone who's been involved with the planning and preparation for this. Without you, this could not have happened. I know there's been lots of meetings, lots of planning. Dr. Irene, thank you. She's been the person behind it all. God bless you. I'm sure everybody here will want us to say thank you to you as well for making this happen. So thank you everyone for your time. Do have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your day. And from us, it's goodbye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. All right, Dickie, I'm going to shut it down. Thank you. You need to stop streaming first.
Yeah, I've stopped streaming. You can shut down.